Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and today I'm sharing with you the Doctor Who Titan Comics panel from New York Comic Con, where the team are talking about the new Titan Doctor Who comic, Empire of the Wolf. Enjoy. Welcome to New York Comic Con 2021, to virtual New York Comic Con 2021. And this is the Titan Comics Doctor Who comics panel, starring the one and only, the mighty Jodie Houser, right there in front of the TARDIS. How are you, mate?
I'm doing pretty good, just traveling through time and space and, writing comics.
Of course, and righting all the wrongs within this frail universe of ours. And Jake Devine, editor supreme of Titan's Doctor Who line. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. Yeah.
Brilliant. Always good and lovely to hear from both of you. Now, this panel, we've got a lot of Doctor Who goodness to talk about, but of course, you guys are cooking up a new Doctor Who comic, Empire of the Wolf, which launches in November. So, Jodie, what can you tell me about Empire of the Wolf?
Empire of the Wolf, which the name kind of gives away a little bit. We're going to see the return of Rose Tyler. Maybe even more than one Rose Tyler. It's hard to talk about without spoiling too much, but we are going to see Rose get to meet both the Eighth Doctor and the 11th Doctor. So basically the Doctor from before she came along, if War Doctor not counted, and the Doctor after she left. So I thought that was a really sort of fun combo to deal with Rose, as someone who doesn't necessarily have the same attachment to Rose as the Doctors we've mostly seen interacting with her.
Yeah, a lovely way to bracket Rose, I think. I think that is very interesting. Because, of course, the relationships that Rose has with doctors that she interacted with are coloured by certain types of more human emotion than was once the case back in the day between a doctor, a companion. So I think that's a very interesting thing for you to investigate. And Jake, how's it been creating and working on this series with Jodie?
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. I'm really excited about this story. I think I feel like every story we do just gets bigger and better. And the fact that I'm going to work on Eighth Doctor and 11th Doctor now, everything we do so far has been something different. So we've just come off of Missy. That went really well.
Which was a big hit and was really well received.
Yeah, we've had some great reviews on that. I'm really happy about that. And again, that's down to like Jodie's writing and Roberta's art and Enrique's colours. And here we get to do a similar but very different thing as well. So now we're going back into a Doctor story, but we've got two Doctors this time, and I think two that have never met in the comics before. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, it's really exciting new stuff going on.
Yeah, and have they ever met? I don't think they've ever met anywhere else either. They haven't met outside of the comics either, right? Eighth and Eleventh.
I don't think so, but I don't want to. Don't quote me on that, because I'm sure there's someone with that.
I'm fairly sure that's
knowledge.
I was just trying to think of there being any kind of audio adventures with those guys, but I'm fairly sure there haven't been.
Because I know that the Eighth Doctor has had so many audio adventures. More than his on-screen appearance. So he's had so much. I don't want to be misquoted.
Yeah.
Eleventh might be in there somewhere.
No, I mean that's the bulk of the Eighth Doctor's exploits, right? Is audio, and those Big Finish lads have done a great job with it as well, with those series. So you've got a slightly amended creative team for Empire of the Wolf. We've got the same author, same artist, but a new colorist, right, guys?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So how did you find and start working with the new colorist on the book?
So Warnia is someone I've had an eye on for a while. I've seen her work, and she's done a couple of bits and pieces for Titan in the past, but never me specifically. And Enrica has been so successful, she's sort of had to move on to bigger and better things. So we thought, okay, who can we get? And Warnia was one of the people that sort of came to mind straight away. I thought she could be really good on this comic. And she was happy to come aboard, and I'm very happy with how it's turned out, because she's different from Enrica, so she's been able to put her own mark on it, but also keep the same world and the same kind of style of Doctor Who going, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, without spoiling things, I know it's very tricky because we haven't released the book yet. But Jodie, can you give us a bit of a sense of how this adventure fits into the wider Who universe?
Well, for folks who read our 10th and 13th Doctor crossover Alternating Currents, which dealt with an alternate Earth that had been taken over by the Sea Devils, they might remember that there was a Rose Tyler in that book who had essentially been raised on an occupied Earth and become a resistance fighter, and was fairly different from the Rose that we got to know in the series. And at the end, the way the time shift worked was she was still around. So the Doctor ended up taking her to a world that was in need of someone like her to lead them to freedom. So in part, this is the story of what happened to that Rose Tyler, who was still around after Earth was restored and didn't really have anywhere to go. But still had a lot of fight in her and still wanted to help people and do good and fight oppression and things like that. So where has she been over the past years? So yeah, again, the title's a little bit of a giveaway there. There's an empire involved.
So how does it feel, Jodie, to have played around in the Doctor universe for long enough so that you can now introduce sequel storylines, follow-up storylines, other adventures for characters that you've created? I imagine that must feel pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I always knew I wanted to come back and see what that Rose was up to when we ended the storyline, just because that is such like an interesting, different version of the character. But getting to have this Rose along with original flavor Rose Tyler, that sounds gross. And getting to see sort of like the contrast between the two of them, because one Rose is still in the middle of her adventure and the other one already, had her happy ending, really, which is, again, not the most common thing for a Doctor Who companion.
No, it really, really isn't. Yeah. An unhappy ending or like a swift and summary disappearance without any kind of satisfying goodbye. I think that's the thing that perhaps the current era of Doctor Who has done far better than the original show. It's the transitions out from and between companions. I mean, nowadays, some thought is paid to the fact that you're coming to the end of somebody's arc and they've got to say farewell and you've got to feel the emotion of it. Whereas previously, extremely important characters, Leela comes to mind, almost get faked out of leaving and never really get to say goodbye. So I think being able to play part, to delve into that storyline must be, those storylines, those interactions between the characters, that must be very satisfying as an author.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think I kind of look at, we kind of had two goodbyes for Rose. And the first one was just the most heart-wrenching, sad, just, everyone knows. And then, she came back and that's when she got to have her happy ending. So it's like we got the really tragic ending, the really wonderful ending, but, maybe neither of them were really endings. Maybe we get to see her again.
Right on. When it comes, I hesitate to use the term original flavor Rose, which you coined a few minutes ago. No, but let's not use it. When it comes to Rose 1.0, what is it about original on broadcast Rose that really spoke to you as a character, Jodie? What did you like about her character?
I mean, I think in a sense, she's so iconic because of when she falls in the timeline. She helped introduce a new era of Doctor Who, and she really was, for a lot of people, the audience's ways in, because for a lot of people, that was their start with Doctor Who. So I think more than companions even usually are, she was really an audience surrogate, and people really, really got to know her. They got to be with her, for maybe their first regeneration and sort of share that experience with her. So I think that's part of why she's so beloved by fans, because they sort of maybe fell in love with the Doctor the same way she did. Yeah,
I think that's very well said. And both of you guys have now had quite a long and extensive run working with Doctor Who in the comics universe. So how has that ride been for both of you? I'll start with you this time, Jake. You know, how have these years of editorial work within the Doctor Who universe been?
It's been a journey. So when I first started, you know, we were cracking on with 13th Doctor. That was all new. That was really cool, something that's cool to jump into. And then moving on from that, getting to explore all these different kinds of stories. Because with the 13th, we sort of had that series, and it was one Doctor, and we had a lot of fun with that. But moving on, jumping into different Doctors and completely different characters like Missy, it's been really interesting because we get to do so much in the Doctor universe, because it is a huge universe, and there's so many characters and so many Doctors to play with. So getting to do that and grow as an editor with the stories that we tell has been really fun and really interesting.
Yeah, I hear you. How about yourself, Jodie?
I mean, yeah, it's been amazing. Again, coming to work on 13 and her fam, like I really love that group and that dynamic, but then getting to sort of stretch even beyond that and play with different Doctors and different companions and different villains. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And I like that the sky doesn't even seem to be the limit. We keep, like Jake said earlier, getting bigger and crazier and better. So yeah, it's just, I'm excited to see where it keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, I think fueled by that partnership between you and Roberta and the art team, is that it strikes me that your adventures have become ever more widescreen as you've gone on, you know, and it really feels like you've got some like super 70mm, you know, kind of very, very widescreen action going on these days, which is an energy that it's lovely to read. You know, if you're a long-term Doctor Who fan and you remember the handheld shaky cam video camera days of the early 70s, it's such a transformation. Now, looking at when we last did a panel, I was asking at that point, we were talking about the Missy book, which you just released. And I was asking you guys, you know, who else is out there you think you'd like to work on? And funnily enough, Jodie, your answer at the time was, well, I'd quite like to work on Rose Tyler. And lo and behold, writ large, here is that very book. Do you have anybody else within the Who mythos that you'd like to try out in the future? You'd like to work with in the future?
I mean, I did a little bit. We had a cameo of River Song in Missy, but she's just she's basically like Indiana Jones jail breakout space professor. Like, she's just such a cool character, and it would be a lot of fun to get to play with her. Donna's probably my favorite companion, and I haven't gotten to write her yet. Yeah, there's just, I could just keep naming characters.
Yeah. Jodie, what is it about? Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over.
Oh, no worries.
What is it about Donna that really speaks to you?
I just like, you know, again, I love the relationship that Rose and the Doctor had and that Martha and the Doctor had, but both of them were, you know, more on the romantic side. So when Donna came along and was like, nope, and just really wanted to be the Doctor's best friend, it was just such a nice shift. And also just Catherine Tate is so funny, but then she has some of the most like heart-wrenching moments also. Like she really did become the conscience for the Doctor in a way I don't think we've seen when he really, really needed one.
Yeah, I think that's a very perceptive way of putting it, for sure. How about yourself, Jake?
I think for me, like, number one on my list at the moment is probably the Ninth Doctor. As I said, what we've been doing so far has been reaching out to all these other Doctors, and we've done different stories here. And I think that's the one on the list from the new set of Doctors that I haven't got to yet. So that'd be cool to make my mark on him. And he was pretty much my first Doctor. I started with the new series in 2005, so it would be really cool to get him down. You might see a brief image of him in this upcoming comic, but it's not a story about him. So having one about that would be really cool.
Oh, mate, yeah.
I'd be up for that.
I'd be up for both of you guys doing that, because he's obviously not my first Doctor. I'm a lot older than you guys, but he is absolutely my favourite Doctor. And I think personally, my view is that that whole Eccleston series is kind of a conceptually perfect piece of television that's really beautifully paced and beautifully written.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a bad episode in that entire sequence. And I think some of the episodes almost become art, really. I'm thinking of Robert Shearman's Dalek. I think it's a great episode. Really well put together. Now, guys, we have a real treat here because Warnia, our colorist, is about to join us. Hey!
Hello!
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Hey,
hello.
Thanks so much for joining us. How is everything?
It's fine and it's night, so I'm sorry if I'm late.
Oh, don't worry at all. So we are right in the middle of our New York Comic Con Doctor Who panel. So thank you so much for joining us. So I have got a bunch of specific questions for you, and we've just been talking about everything that entails in this new book, Empire of the Wolf. But how does it feel to be working with these guys on Doctor Who?
I think it's amazing. This is my first time working with them, but everything happened so fast and it's amazing. Yeah.
Can I ask you a specific question about the colors that you've been using? What in terms of creating the story? What's your personal philosophy about using color to create drama in a comic book tale?
Before work, usually I'm reading a script. And then I'm usually using a color psychology for that, for scene 1 or page 1 or page 2. I'm usually using that.
Yeah.
Like when it's sad or it's intense scene, I'm usually using that color psychology for makes me easily for that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, guys, I know that we've got to be very careful about the talking about the storyline and not giving too much of it away. But one of the things that I've been told is that there is a new character that is appearing in this book. Jodie, what can you tell us about this new character without giving too much away?
Well, his name is DePau, and he is the before I mentioned that the alternating currents, Rose, have been dropped off on a world that needed her help. And he is one of the residents of that world. He is the first planet that she ever went to and helped out the people there who were in the middle of a fight for their freedom. So he has since sort of become her number one person, trusted advisor. So that we're going to sort of see what that relationship is like and what, how he sort of feels about his Empress, we'll say. And sort of looking at the work she's done and the lives she's changed, because he's a big part of that.
Yeah, very interesting. Oh, very interesting. And Jake, for you, the process dealing and working with the BBC about creating the books, how do you find them as partners? What's that journey like for you?
The BBC are actually really great to work with. We work a lot in licensed comics, so we always have to, work with licensors on our comics. Sometimes they're heavily involved, sometimes they're not. The BBC have that great medium where they're involved with us, but they give us the freedom to sort of tell the stories and use the characters that we want to use. And so when we've been building up this story, they've been really great. They've had no problems with what we're doing. They're nothing but praise for it, which is great because when you've got them behind you, they really help us promote the comics as well. I find them really, really good to work with. And a lot more exciting stuff to come with them, I think.
Yeah, now let's just do a quick check before I ask you the next question. Where is everybody based right now in the world as we're having this conversation?
I'm in Los Angeles.
You're in Los Angeles, and Jake, you're here in London, right, mate?
In London, yeah.
Yeah. And how about yourself,
I'm in Bandung, Indonesia.
In Indonesia, wow.
Yep.
So we really are covering the. Thanks so much for joining us, given the time difference. That's very good of you. So, and this isn't that kind of a metaphor for editing books and editing comic books in the 21st century, Jake? Because aren't you often like wrangling, kind of creative staff who are dispersed all over the world? And given that is the case, what's that like?
It's really interesting because you have to sort of balance how you're managing all the work over different times. So when I'm working with Jodie, I'm sort of working early morning or for her early morning and my late afternoon, and then with Warnia and Roberta, you sort of know the times when you have to sort of message the right person because everyone's on a different time scale. So it's interesting because it's not just you're sort of given a deadline day to the different deadline day to different people because they're all going to be at different times. So it's trying to work out that sort of scale, I guess, of when and where to go for things. So it's knowing your dates is a good help for that.
And I know I don't help things because I tend to be someone who works late at night and then sleeps in, so that just makes it even more of a time difference than it actually is. So
yeah, so Jake's contacting you when it's like 4 a.m. his time and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I imagine you might have days if you tend to work late, Jodie. I guess you might have times, Jake, where you're actually contacting first thing your morning, and you guys would still be able to keep that through line going, right?
Yeah, occasionally I've had emails from Jodie when I've just started work, and I'm thinking, oh wait, hang on, and she said, oh yeah, no, it's like 1 or 2 a.m. here. I'm like, wow, you're really committed to this, Pat. That's good.
Yeah, but I mean that also helps because I know if I finish something in the evening, it'll be ready for your morning.
Yeah.
So here's my question: if you all had your own personal TARDIS, if you could step in that TARDIS and go to any, let's forget about the future or the galaxy, but if you could step into any era in human history and take a look at it and experience it, what would appeal to you? I'm going to start with you, Jake.
For me, I would want to go to sort of the ancient civilizations like Egypt, Rome, all that kind of thing. I love that era. So I think seeing how all that was in the early days, the grand empires and all that kind of thing, I think that would be really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. How about yourself, Jodie?
I mean, that sounds really cool, and especially like seeing mysteries of like how things were built that we still don't really quite understand. That would be really cool. I mean, also part of me just wants to go back to like the era of my childhood and like buy the toys I've been able to get and just bring them back. And I think I'd be less worried about messing up the timeline doing that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Messing up the timeline is always a real concern. I mean, that's a big fear of mine. And how about yourself, Nia? If you could travel anywhere in time, where would you like to go to?
Maybe in 90s when I'm a child. Like Jodie, it's more simpler time and we don't have any burden in our shoulders. So maybe. Yeah.
I definitely think there's a story in that about, and of course there have been iterations of this, being able to travel back through your own personal timeline to a more like innocent and trouble-free time in your own life. I think that's very, very attractive. But of course, these things are fraught with problems if you actually do them. So you never want to, and it's almost like they created like a 60-year-old TV show just to investigate those concepts. So guys, we are nearing the end of the 13th Doctor's tenure, in the sense that we know that by the end of, I think, next year, we're probably going to be looking at some point at a new Doctor in the future. What would you like from at whatever point Jodie leaves the role and we get into being a new Doctor? What are you looking for from the next era of Doctor Who when it comes to TV?
I mean, I think my working brain is on, so I'm mostly interested in like how they're going to be different, what kind of stories we could tell with them. I don't know. I think I'm really excited to see what BBC is planning and just how we can work with it. That's kind of the boring answer, but Yeah, it's like
also,
I'm still a Doctor Who fan, but my work brain kind of comes first here, I think.
Of course, that goes without saying. How about you, Jake?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to what Jodie said, like something different. Every Doctor has their own personality, so you're trying to see what you come up with next in terms of what this Doctor's like, what their, I guess, their goal is. I mean, every Doctor is sort of different. You sort of Christopher Eccleston, who was sort of just recuperating from the war, and then you had 10th Doctor, who was, still had that bit of that chip on his shoulder about it, but he was learning to move on. 11th Doctor got a bit more chipper. 12th Doctor was a bit grumpy, but he was more on just doing his own thing now, and then 13 really just sort of having fun. So where they can go next with this sort of next Doctor's character would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think, yeah, I think you're making a good point there, mate. And the thing is, it's about having faith in the process and seeing what happens. And for you guys as creative people, and particularly when you're in the business of creating those stories, it's always going to lead you into different doors from fans like myself who are sat there and watching it. And Nia, since you've been on board with these Doctor Who books and you've been delivering your colours, how have you gone about, and what kind of inspiration have you had directly for the stories that you've been working on? That world of colour that you create, where does the inspiration come from within you?
I love seeing other colorist work, and then,
of course,
and then maybe watching some movie and other cartoon like Rick and Morty. I love the color there. So
me too.
I take a lot of other colorists too, and that's all.
Yeah, no, but I think it's tremendously important. I think that's great advice for anybody who's looking to get into the comics business on any level. I don't think it can be underestimated how much time you need to spend with the work of others who do great work that you admire. I think that's very important. This is always something we like to close on our Titan panels, because we get asked time and time again in between shows, what's the best way in for me? And I know you've answered a version of this question before, Jodie, but if you had to impart any kind of wisdom in terms of your way into the business and what want-to-be creators should be doing, what advice would you leave for people watching this panel?
I mean, I think I had a really good point there, is like, you don't want to just be looking at comics. You want to be looking at movies and novels, on the writing side, to make sure that you're getting a broader range of inspiration. Because if you're just looking at comics, it's going to, sort of just come off like a copy of comics, really, where you want to have just a much broader set of influences and just be a more well-rounded writer and creator.
Yeah. Well said, mate. How about yourself, Jake?
I think just doing the job, like if you want to write comics, write a comic, whether anyone sees it, whether you get paid for it, as long as you do it, the more you do it, the better you get. And then just keep trying to get it in front of people, and someone will see it. Yeah,
I think that's true. I think one of the toughest jobs to me, having done this job myself, is actually being a comics editor, because the thing about being a comics writer, a comics artist, a colorist, a letterer, they're very definable roles that you can focus in on easily. Now, whether you've got to be lucky and you've got to be talented, like both of you guys, in order to get regular work. But being an editor is really rather a nebulous career to strive for, particularly within the comics business. And everybody I know has a different route into doing it. So your story is not like, say, David Leitch's story, is not like Steve White's story. So I think, I know you covered this off recently, Jake, but could you just spend a little bit of time on how you actually ended up doing what you're doing?
So originally I was an intern at Titan quite a few years ago now. I actually applied for a job in Thin Planet, the store which Titan
with which we are affiliated with. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I got told they didn't have any vacancies there, but when I want to try for the internship, and I said, yeah, let's go for it. And turned out to be a fantastic experience, and made me realize exactly what I sort of wanted to do. Because I'd studied sort of creative writing at uni, and was more doing my own stuff. But this really opened my eyes to say, oh, how I could do this as a career, and particularly with comics, because as I said before, comics editor was never really a job that I knew existed or thought could exist. And then a few years later, I started as an editorial assistant and sort of worked my way up, like learning how the job's done, getting to work on different projects and slowly building up my skills. And now here I am. So
yeah,
that's my story.
And the rest, as they say, is glorious history. So I guess the answer is, if you're living in the UK and you're interested in becoming a comic book editor, come and intern for us at Titan. That's the Jake Devine method. And guys, before we go, outside of the Doctor Who universe, the glorious Doctor Who universe, what else are you working on at the moment? What else are you working on, Jodie?
Currently, I have coming up soon a couple of Critical Role projects. I've been working on their Vox Machina Origins book, and then there's also a Caleb Widogast graphic novel coming out, which is one of the characters from the Mighty Nine. That's
excited about that one.
Yes, and then also on further on the space side, I'm one of the writers for Star Trek Year 5, and we're having our final big wrap-up issue, which is number 25, that is kind of like a writer's jam issue where we all came back and helped tell a little bit of an epilogue story. And one of the other writers on there will be familiar to Doctor Who fans, Paul Cornell. So that was a lot of fun. And I have some other stuff that'll be announced hopefully soon that I can't really talk about. But all fun things.
Mate, that Year 5 run has been fantastic. It's been great, and must have been great working with Paul. He's such a nice guy as well.
I adore Paul, and then the showrunners, as we call them, on Star Trek Year 5 are two of my best friends, Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. So,
brilliant.
The whole room is fantastic.
Fantastic. How about yourself, Nia? What else are you working on in addition to Doctor Who? Have you got anything else that you can tell us about?
I'm working on some indie publisher for the Kickstarter and a cover, here and there.
Okay. I can't wait for everybody to see the work you're producing on this book. I know that Jake can't either. So by the time we do another one of these panels, the book will have been out there and everybody will have seen it. And Jake, yourself, what else are you working on? Because I know it's a ton of stuff in addition to Doctor Who.
Yeah, loads and loads of stuff. So right now, other than Doctor Who, I'm working on Horizon Zero Dawn, which is based on the best-selling video game. Issue 1 and 2 are out now, so if you haven't got it, go and get it. Issue 3 will be out shortly, so you've got time to catch up. We've also just announced our Cowboy Bebop comic, which I'm ecstatic about. I can't wait for that to come out. That launches in December. We've got some amazing covers for that.
We've been doing a ton of work on that behind the scenes, so we're all very excited about that book.
So keep your eyes peeled for that. That'll be out very soon. I've also got a really interesting book coming out early next year, which is a graphic novel about Chris Kyle, who was the American Sniper. There was a 2014 movie about it with Bradley Cooper, which was directed by Clint Eastwood. That was an amazing film. We've also done a graphic novel about his story. That's going to be really cool. So keep your eyes open for that as well.
And also more great stuff
many more.
that we can't announce it yet. But Jake said, and by the way, guys, I don't even know this, but I'm gonna publicly announce this here at Comic Con, New York Comic Con. Jake's just had a massive promotion at work as well. Jake's just had a big promotion at Titan. Do you know what I mean? So well done, mate. Well done. Very well done.
Thank you very much.
No,
he on the work.
He truly is the lord and master of all he surveys now, and I couldn't think of anybody who's earned it more. So this has been the Doctor Who Empire of the Wolf panel with Warnia, with Jodie, and with Jake. And I know the guys here and myself can't wait for you to see the book, which is going to be out in about a month's time. Empire of the Wolf. You can come and say hello to us at Forbidden Planet TV on YouTube if you want to see a bunch more interviews with this team about the Doctor Who work, and you want to hear more news about Empire of the Wolf before it launches. We will almost certainly be doing an episode on there to talk a bit more in detail when we get close to the publication date. So thanks, guys. It's lovely to see you as always. And to everybody out there, we'll see you in the Funny Papers. Have a very happy New York Comic Con 2021. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.